Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Thank you. Please welcome to the stage ALEC National Chairman, Arizona Senate President Karen Fann.
Good afternoon. As the policy portion of our meeting has now begun, I hope to see that each of you have enjoyed your meetings up to date and have engaged in some vigorous policy debates. It's really the best of what we do at ALEC. ALEC Model Policy is better vetted and tested because we do the work of the legislators and stakeholders at our meetings. At this time, I would like to invite Kansas Representative Patrick Penn to please come up and bless our food.
Would you please bow with me? Father, we come to you right now in the name of Jesus, and we thank you for this day that you have made. We rejoice and we're glad in it. And Father, as humbly as we know how, we come to say thank you. Thank you for giving us a nation filled with people of love and kindness, but a nation of laws. Father, we thank you for this organization, ALEC, where we have people who come together who understand not only how to make the laws, but why they should be made and the purposes and designs of your heart. Father, we thank you right now for each of the friends that we've made, each of the families that are represented in this room, and those who are servant leaders after your own likeness and your own heart yourself. Lord, as we come together for this meal, we bless the hands that have prepared it. We ask that you make it a nourishment for our bodies, that you nourish our souls. And Father, we just ask a special encouragement over everyone in this room, in this city, and in this nation, that our trust does not lie in horses and chariots. It matters not who is on the throne in D.C., but only who is in the throne of heaven, and that is you. So we ask that you rest, rule, reign, and abide in our hearts, and help us spread the love of Jesus Christ abroad. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Penn. Well, it's been a tremendous year for me personally. Serving ALEC as the organization's national chairman, I have been honored, and this has been an honor of my lifetime. Just this morning, we talked about issues like protecting our states from infiltration by Chinese manufactured technology, supporting law enforcement, and how to target crime in safe and a responsible way. Whether it's a partnership between the public and private sectors to engage in rigorous debate on a pressing issue, or one of free market movement nonprofits to share ideas and create change. Everything that gets done at ALEC is a collaborative effort. We have learned so much in our time together, but it's now time for me to transfer the gavel. Could I please have Florida Representative Daniel Perez join me here on stage? Every December meeting, we have the honor of passing on the gavel to the next ALEC National Chairman. This year, I'm pleased to be able to hand off this symbol of order and leadership to someone who knows a thing or two about the work that happens at the state level. Representative Perez is a member of Florida's House of Representatives. From the time he was 6 years old, Representative Perez has called his Winchester neighborhood his home. Today, as a successful attorney and as a dedicated member of his community, Representative Perez is committed to protecting the American people. He has been right at my side throughout the entire year, and I have full confidence that his work will be a success as the next national chairman. Congratulations, Representative Perez. I wish you the best of fortune.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an honor, and I know I have very big shoes to fill with President Fan, who has done a phenomenal job, as well as President Adams and Speaker Gunn and those that came before me. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Lisa Nelson. She is the true leader and the one that we look towards for guidance. So thank you very much for that. And to the rest of you, I look forward to the next year. Hopefully it is the best year yet from ALEC, because that is our goal, to always improve, and we have a lot to improve moving forward as the foundation has been more solid than ever. So now is definitely our time. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Danny. Congratulations, Representative Perez, or actually should I now say National Chairman Perez. As tradition, it is time to announce the award recipient for the Peterson Prize for Venture Philanthropy. I always hate getting that word out. ALEC has solicited nominations from those enterprise champions leading in the social sector of charitable giving. The prize is named for Gregor G. Peterson, who was a charitable champion in his own right. So much so that he wanted to ensure that there would be new champions in the social sector for many years to come. This year marks the 4th award of its kind. Joining us now to help us reveal this year's winner is Nicole Hoplin, who is co-founder and president of Jackson Charitable Advisors. Nicole, can you come up and join me here?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Senator Fan, for your kind words and leadership. As mentioned, my name is Nicole Hoplin, and I have the great privilege, along with my business partner, John Jackson, to serve the Peterson family as their charitable advisors, helping steward their philanthropy. We especially want to thank Lisa Nelson and you, the members of ALEC, for serving once again as this year's host of the 4th annual Gregor G. Peterson Prize in Venture Philanthropy. We are grateful to Lisa for understanding how private philanthropy and work in nonprofits goes hand in hand with public policy to create positive change in people's lives. It is a privilege to be here today to share the results of a year-long process with you and name this year's winner. As a San Francisco native and Stanford alum, Gregor G. Peterson was a patriot. He believed in limited government, free markets, and the American dream. He was also a pioneer in venture capital. In 1962, he co-founded one of the first venture firms on the West Coast. He was also a committed philanthropist who we lost too soon. In 2019, as a tribute to their father, Greg's 2 sons, Eric and Chris, created the Gregor G. Peterson Prize in Venture Philanthropy. This was created to honor their father's legacy. The $250,000 prize goes annually to a trailblazing startup in the nonprofit sector that honors Greg Peterson's business principles, including teamwork, innovation, and an entrepreneurial spirit. This year, more than 70 qualified nonprofits were nominated, making the pool of candidates tremendously talented and more competitive than ever. We thank ALEC especially, and you, its members, for nominating worthy nonprofits in your states and communities. We are now accepting nominations for the 2023 prize at petersonventureprize.com. The deadline is July 1st of 2023. And now it is my honor to introduce Eric Peterson, son of Gregor G. Peterson and the creator of this prize, to announce this year's winner.
Thank you, Nicole. Venture capital is about making an investment to accelerate growth. But when it comes to nonprofits, we've learned venture philanthropy can also be about making an investment to stop growth. The practice of medicine in our country has always been a meritocracy. But today, our healthcare system, our institutions, are being pressured to adopt a woke ideology. Thank you. Dr. Stanley Goldfarb recently founded the nonprofit Do No Harm to eliminate that kind of discrimination in healthcare. Through research, education, and litigation, Do No Harm seeks to expose and stop this growing trend in healthcare that favors politically correct solutions over the needs of the individual patients. As a family, we wholeheartedly support that mission. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Peterson family, I'm pleased to present this year's Gregor G. Peterson Prize in Venture Philanthropy to Christina Rasmussen, Executive Director of Do No Harm. Christina?
Well, thank you, Nicole and Eric, for that wonderfully kind introduction. And what a privilege it is to receive the Peterson Prize in Venture Philanthropy. You are not just giving us an award, you are giving us your trust. And this prize sends a message that stopping the woke takeover of healthcare is a national imperative. The health and well-being of every American, of every background, is in danger, and we need to rescue the healthcare system before it's too late. Do No Harm is devoted to this cause, and the award only strengthens our commitment to make a difference. Our chairman, Dr. Stanley Goldfarb, was supposed to give this speech. Unfortunately, he came down with COVID earlier this week, and I wanted to say a few words about why Dr. Goldfarb founded Do No Harm. This is an amazing man who has spent more than 50 years caring for patients as a doctor. He taught at one of the most prestigious medical schools in the country, and he is a renowned kidney expert. But he was increasingly alarmed by the rise of extreme identity politics in medical education, medical research, and clinical practice. Under the banner of equity and critical race theory, he heard calls for division and even discrimination within healthcare. He saw that the federal government and some state governments were beginning to push dangerous policies that would weaken the bond of trust that's supposed to be between doctors and patients. And he felt that this was a violation of his Hippocratic oath to do no harm. That's why he resolved to ask the tough questions. Questions like, why are we putting skin color and gender ahead of merit in medical school admissions? Why are we asking our medical students to study social justice and climate change instead of the best way to heal sick patients? Why are some students being denied access to apply for prestigious medical scholarships on the basis of their race? And why are we forcing our medical school professors to swear allegiance to political beliefs in order to apply for tenure? The questions have just kept coming. Why are medical journals running opinion pieces on systemic racism instead of focusing on the rigorous scientific research we need? Why are nurses being forced to take implicit bias training just to get a state license or keep their job? And why are we demanding that doctors sign off on surgeries that would permanently disfigure children in the name of gender affirmation? Why are we not doing more to protect autistic kids or foster children who have been convinced that removing healthy body parts is the only way to self-acceptance? These questions bear on the well-being of every American, but the people who run our healthcare system don't seem to want to answer them. Maybe they're afraid of admitting the truth, that the world's best healthcare system is deliberately lowering standards in the name of woke ideology. We are on track to have less qualified medical students, more shoddy medical research, less capable medical professionals, and most concerningly, worse care for every single man, woman, and child in America. The stakes really could not be higher, but we don't have to let this happen. I believe that we can save healthcare, and the leaders in this room, you have an important role to play. Because the truth is that in each of your states, you have medical schools, hospitals, and other healthcare institutions that have bought into this divisive and discriminatory approach to medicine. You can hold them accountable. As lawmakers, you have powerful tools at your disposal: investigations, appropriations, and legislation. That's why Do No Harm has developed 2 model bills that you can pick up and champion. The first bill is designed to protect medical educators and students at medical schools from being force-fed divisive and extreme ideas. It also seeks to protect your medical professionals and their patients from woke discrimination at the doctor's office. Our second bill is designed to protect children from irreversible transgender treatments and surgeries, which activists are now demanding for the youngest amongst us. And it asks that schools be fully transparent about what they're going to do when a child says they believe they're a different gender. We know that people are waking up to what's happening in healthcare. We have seen the polling. The American people do not want healthcare to go the way of critical race theory in K-12 education or defunding the police. They want what we all want, which is for our doctors and our hospitals to be world-class. And we know at Do No Harm there's an opportunity to realize that vision. And I believe that the American people will reward the leaders who rescue healthcare. Please come up and say hello during this lunch or right after. I'd love to get to know you and hear what's happening in your state. Thank you for joining us in this necessary work. And thank you to the Peterson family for this incredible prize. We look forward to honoring the legacy of Gregor G. Peterson. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage ALEC Chief Executive Officer, Lisa B. Nelson.
All right. Congratulations. It's fantastic. For the fourth year in a row, we've had absolutely phenomenal nominations and winners. So it's really wonderful to see that happen. And Christina, you did a great job. I get the privilege to introduce our next speaker, and I promise there will be lunch, but we have such a great program that we want to pack it all in before the Vice President gets here. Cynthia Fisher is the founder of patientsrightsadvocacy.org, and I'm going to make sure I say that because there is a website that you can go to. Has become a friend of ours and an advocate for an issue that actually is very similar to some of the things that Christina was talking about, but in the same field of medical transparency and pricing transparency. She has been a forceful advocate for this through some personal anecdotes that I hope that she will share with us. But most importantly, she's taken her passion for this issue all the way to the White House. And in the previous administration and in the current administration, is one of the very few people that was successful in getting both White Houses to agree on an executive order around supporting medical transparency. I know she's been working diligently at the state level, and we even have a model policy, and Brooklyn Roberts has been working with Cynthia and her team on developing that model policy. It is passed in Virginia and in Colorado. And without further ado, I'd love to welcome Cynthia Fisher to the stage.
Good afternoon. It is truly an honor and pleasure to be here today, and I can't thank Lisa enough for the organization's engagement in delivering free market into healthcare. Yesterday, Speaker Newt Gingrich mentioned to you all about healthcare price transparency and its polling results at being 87% of American public wanting to know prices in healthcare in advance of care, because they know once they can see prices, they can be able to save their own money and have freedom of control over their healthcare choices. A recent survey of the midterm voters showed that it was north of 90% of American voters wanting healthcare price transparency. This is huge. Years ago, Newt had said, if there's any political issue in a policy that you have north of 60% support, stand in front of it and smile. Well, this is something that is long overdue, and thanks to the instrumental work that Newt did over 20 years ago, he wrote the book, and I recommend it for all of you still, Saving Lives, Saving Money. And the Trump administration, with the strength and leadership of President Trump and Vice President Pence and their team, moved mountains to deliver full-scale, system-wide price transparency to the U.S. citizenry. That we, for the first time, the Trump administration delivered moving mountains. They took existing law, took the dust off the shelf, and made it into an executive order and administrative action, giving us the right to know prices in advance of care everywhere. They made it that every single hospital in this country has to post prices online as of nearly 2 years ago, January 1st, 2021. They made it that every insurance company has to post all of the prices they negotiate for every employer, and even Medicare and Medicaid costs need to be revealed, posted online for every employer and every health plan. In addition, they delivered through Congress the ability for every employer for the first time to have the right to access all of their historical health claims data so that they can parse through that data and find out where they're being overcharged for their employees and be able to give incentives and bonuses to employees to steer them to better quality care at much lower prices and put these runaway cost trends in reverse. So we applaud strongly because it took great courage and bravery by the Trump and Pence administration to overcome the objections and fierce lobbying of the healthcare industrial complex. And why did they fight so hard for this moment in time? Is because they knew that free markets mattered. And they knew that we are at a junction point and a fork in the road where this country is either leading toward bigger and bigger government controlling and managing our healthcare in conjunction with the healthcare industrial complex, or they shift the power to the patient. And they enable all of us to get control of actually seeing prices for the first time, knowing prices. And they knew very clearly that when you can see a price, you ask the next question, well, what am I gonna get for that price? And so price discovery ushers in quality transparency. And when all of us can see prices and quality, we will receive better quality of care at a much lower cost. Not only to us individually and as families, but societally. And they were bold enough to fight this fight and give this to all of us, this right. Because they were fed up. They were fed up with looking at the data, seeing that the United States, our country, pays 2.5 times more than any other developed country for healthcare. And though we have among the best of scientists and the best of innovation, our quality is rapidly deteriorating. In fact, our lifespans went down by 2 years independent of COVID, and we are slipping on our lifespan in compared to any other developed country. So poor quality at 2.5 times the cost. This is the chance for free market to take hold. Why else did they fight so hard? Well, it was for the individual stories. In fact, they put the patient first. The whole agenda about price transparency was to shift the power to the patient to be able to be in control of their health decisions as well as their wealth decisions, and to stop being blind to no prices in advance of care, being blindsided by many times outrageous medical bills that don't even match the medical care experience, and having to sign a blank check in order to get care at any hospital or physician practice throughout this country. And yet, what was the outcome of this hiding of prices and the industry keeping prices secret? Don't think the Trump administration wasn't sued by both the hospitals and the insurance companies, and they lost in the courts. Not the Trump administration won on behalf of all of us. We consumers have the right to know before we go. But they fought because of people like Wanda Brooks, who's on our website in our video. By chance, we went to a courthouse in Fredericksburg, Maryland, on the hospital, Mary Washington Hospital, named after George Washington's mother. Built a beautiful cathedral crystal atrium. But Wanda was sued on a Friday afternoon for $8,000 of medical charges, and she is a nurse in a nearby facility. And they decided that her emergency visit that she did not want to go on, she just needed a break and a glass of water because she was dehydrated. That emergency visit that her own employer asked her to go cost her over $8,000 out of her coverage that she did not have. Single mother of two, she ended up being sued, and the hospital garnished half of her wages. We helped fight in the courts for her and found that she was indeed overcharged on many levels in that care that were irrelevant to her health diagnosis. And the charges were dropped. Another nurse, Mass General nurse, was what brought me to Washington, was told she had cancer and needed proton beam, but they didn't cover her proton beam therapy for her cancer, which was preferred, and so they set her up with a social worker to become a beggar. That's right. She came to me, among friends and other family members, to raise $38,000 before she could get her care. What? A nurse at Mass General being denied care on a modality that they provide, and yet being set up with a social worker to beg? I'm sorry, I had to come to Washington. What we see is everyone, and I would bet if I sat with every one of you, we all have a story of being overcharged or a family member. And so many Americans, 64%, delay care for fear of financial ruin. Price transparency, however, was fought for and now in our hands because of the successes that the people that took that courage to run healthcare by the numbers and get access to these prices have made a significant difference. And so what the administration of Vice President Pence and Trump saw was they brought in businesses that saved 30 to 50% because they got access to their health claims data. They reversed engineered prices, and they basically found a way to steer and give bonuses to employees to lower the cost of healthcare and drugs. And they've saved 30 to 50% for their businesses and put it back into wages, which have been suppressed by the current system. And so to increase wages in these inflationary times, we also want to deliver what we saw in Montana, where Marilyn Bartlett, head of the state 30,000 employee health program, with a deficit at the time, was brought in to turn it around, and they had $9 million in the hole, and they had to overcome that. Within 2 years, by Marilyn looking at all of the hospitals' Medicare cost data, where she found out how hospitals actually make money in Medicare, make about 10% to 20% in Medicare, she negotiated a reference-based price at nearly 200% of Medicare for all of the state employees, and within 2 years saved $121 million for the state and put it into the coffers. Many school districts in Ohio, like Ashtabula and Osceola School District in Florida, just this past year, they saved $21 million in a 2-year time frame from a $68 million plan. This can happen across the country for communities, towns, and school districts to get back the money that is so due them for education and their core businesses. And it all can be done, but we need you. We need your leadership. We're thrilled this administration has kept these executive orders and rules. We're thrilled that the penalties are to be higher, to $2 million for hospitals for not complying. And sadly, our organization does a semi-annual report on what is hospital compliance at posting their hospital prices and letting them visible to all Americans. And only 16% of the hospitals in this country are complying with the law. So to the leadership of ALEC and those that Lisa mentioned, like Patrick Neville in Colorado, who got it signed in Colorado, strongly bipartisan. Remember, this is a 90% issue. Virginia, Governor Youngkin following suit to codify these rules into state law. And by putting them into state law and enforcing the law in the states, and moreover, all of you leading that cause to implement this in this next session, have the ability to truly deliver free market, a functional and a competitive marketplace in healthcare for all of us. And it's gonna take bravery, it's gonna take courage, it's gonna take your tenacity against the many lobbyists that will come and argue why not. But you know every one of your constituents will honor you and applaud you in that fight to deliver a far better quality healthcare system so we can live longer lives at a much lower cost and put it back into the US economy, especially in these inflationary times. Think what you can deliver to the American individual, the American family, in their ability for wages and keeping their take-home pay, as well as every single American business that this year was told that their insurance rates and their hospital increases in prices next year are expected to go up 20 to 24%. Outrageous, far above inflation. So you have this opportunity, and I thank for those leaders that are actually really taking hold, and ALEC has done a beautiful job on drafting the state legislation that you can take forward and pass and change healthcare, and you are the revolutionaries. So thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage, Karen Fan.
Cynthia, thank you so much for lending us your insights and giving us something to think about over lunch and over the course of next year. For those of you who may or may not know, this is actually a codification of model policy that ALEC passed just this last summer in Atlanta. Our own Art Laffer, who works with ALEC, as many of you know who he is, he has been speaking on this very subject with it, and he states that we believe that there is an estimated $44 trillion in savings if this were enacted in every state across the United States. So when we start thinking about putting that on a larger scale in money, you can see how impactful this legislation really can be in your states and in your country. While you've got some time, I want to draw your attention to our State of Federalism survey. We want the state lawmakers here to share your thoughts on the state of American federalism in a brief survey being conducted by the Frontier Center in cooperation with ALEC. Responses are anonymous and will help to enhance understanding how state sovereignty is currently functioning and to identify the opportunities and challenges that this governing structure presents. Your insights on federalism are especially valuable at this unique inflection point in the nation's history. If you have already completed the survey in Atlanta or in an ALEC email, thank you all. If not, now's your chance to participate. You can access the survey through the QR code on the screen or by the cards on your table or through your ALEC app. We hope you will enjoy your meal, get to know some of the people at your table. Enjoy, and we'll be back shortly with our number one speaker, Vice President Michael Pence.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage 2017 ALEC National Chairman, Indiana Senator Jim Buck.
Well, it's good to be with each one of you. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. I know you're going to enjoy the next speaker. I think you need to know a little bit about him. It's been my pleasure to know him for about 30 years. My wife Judy always had told Mike that she felt that God had his hand upon him. And as we get older, we begin to understand that coincidences really aren't coincidences, but they're a result of putting our hands in the hands of the man from Galilee. And if it's ever true of a man, it's Mike Pence. After Mike got out of college, he earned his law degree, but prior to that, he married the love of his life, Karen. And in 1988, Mike decided he would run for Congress, and he lost. Well, then in 1990, he decided he'd run for Congress again, and he lost again. But that led to a tug on his hand to write a book about that type of campaigning back in '91. The Confessions of a Negative Campaigner. And he promised at that time he would never again be involved in negative activities. And he's kept that true to this day. During the 90s, Mike became a favorite radio talk show host and even had his own TV program. He self-described himself as Rush Limbaugh on decaf. But it was because of that popularity in the 90s that Mike ran again for Congress in 2000. And he was successful. Not only was he successful, but when he got to Washington, he made many friends on both sides of the aisle. He worked his way up in the ranks of Congress, and I believe you were the third highest ranking member in the House at the time. I always told him he could have been Speaker if he stayed. But after 12 years, he felt a calling to come to Indiana and run for governor. Even though it was a three-way race, he still won. And Mike, when he was our governor, picked up the mantle and really turned the state into a state that works. He signed one of the largest tax cuts in our state's history. He was a strong supporter and funder of school choice, making a huge difference in our youth's population. Some would call it a coincidence. But when Trump was running, he happened to be in Indianapolis, and he couldn't take off because there was a part that they couldn't get for his airplane. So Mike and Karen were sure to invite the governor or the president to the governor's residence. And during that evening visit and the next morning, that hand of God, I truly believe, reached down and changed he and Karen's life. And he became the choice for Vice President of the United States. He took office in January of 2017. He was one of the most hardworking vice presidents in modern times, who traveled extensively around the world on the behalf of the president. He was called upon to break a tie, I believe, about 13 times, somewhere in there, more than any of the previous three vice presidents combined. and he was assigned the task of heading up the coronavirus task force. Amazing things that got accomplished under his due diligence. There's one thing nobody can ever say, that Mike Pence wasn't one of the most loyal vice presidents a president has ever had. I cannot tell you what an honor it is to present to you not only a friend, but a friend of ALEC, a friend of life, liberty, and our Constitution. It's men like him that's going to keep the next generation free. So it's my high honor to introduce to you the former Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Well, hello, ALEC. I want to thank my great friend, Senator Jim. You could give him a round of applause. He is just, in so many ways, Senator Jim Buck defines conservatism in the Indiana State House. He's a man of integrity and a great and dear friend of mine. I'm deeply humbled. Abraham Lincoln said memorably that his only ambition in life was to be esteemed by people he esteemed. And so I'm grateful for your esteem. I truly am. But Jim knows me well enough to know the introduction I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican, in that order. And it's my honor to be here at the 2022 ALEC States and Nation Policy Summit, the home of champions of limited government and free market economics in every state in the Union. So thank you all. Thanks for the honor to be with you. I know I'm the only thing standing in between you and your airplanes or cars home. So I promise in the 2 hours I've been given, followed by Q&A, that I won't go on too terribly long. But there's a few things on my heart I want to say. And first and foremost, I want to thank your National Chairwoman, Karen Fann. Senator Fann, thank you so much for your leadership. Also, I can honestly say I was for Lisa Nelson before it was cool. I mean, I met her years ago. Little did I know that she would emerge as really not only the CEO of one of the most dynamic conservative organizations in America, but one of the most important voices in the conservative movement. Lisa, thank you as well for your leadership. And I'm also told that Congressman Andy Harris has been with us today, who I serve with in the Congress of the United States. And you're over there in the blinding light. An incredibly principled man and part of a new majority that retired Nancy Pelosi once and for all. Thank you, Andy. Wow. You know, I stand before you today as your former vice president, but I hope you also can see from that overly generous introduction that I stand before you today as a former governor. And a true believer in the principle of federalism enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. I know how important the work that each and every one of you does every day. And I'm grateful that for nearly 50 years, ALEC has proudly fought for the timeless ideal that our founding fathers well understood. The states are not subordinate departments of the federal government. All 50 states are the foundation of freedom in America. The truth is, you all know and you prove in your own careers, in your own state houses every day, when states are free to lead, to innovate, to be the laboratories of democracy, America thrives. Our system of federalism was created in the U.S. Constitution. I look at the 10th Amendment of the Constitution more as an exclamation mark, because the truth of the matter is the Constitution itself is a document of limited government, of enumerated powers. And each one of you understands that at a deep and profound level. You also understand the wisdom of our founders built on that biblical principle that iron sharpens iron. So one person sharpens another. The truth is, when we have vibrant federalism in America, good ideas developed in one state can be replicated in another, and bad ideas developed in one state are not national policy. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of a movement, part of an organization, and leading in careers to bring that to fruition. Jim was kind enough to mention that I just finished writing my autobiography, the title of which is So Help Me God. I'm actually contractually obligated to mention that to you today. Thanks for getting that joke. You know, it's the story of growing up in a small town in southern Indiana, the son of a combat veteran, a first-generation Irish American. My parents grew up in Chicago, and we moved to a small town before I showed up. But from very early on in my life, I dreamed of someday representing my hometown here in our nation's capital. But I must tell you, I could never have imagined I would have had the privilege to be governor of the state that my parents had moved to shortly before I was born. And it would have been beyond my wildest dreams to ever imagine that I would have been able to raise my right hand to become the 48th Vice President of the United States. So on behalf of myself and my family, thank you for the privilege of being your Vice President. It was the greatest honor of my life. You know, I was inspired to the Republican Party by the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. Actually started in politics, as you may read. I don't know if I mentioned I did a book. I started in politics as a Democrat, but I heard in the voice and the values and the eloquence and the Midwestern conservatism of our 40th president what drew me to the Republican Party. It's extraordinary to think, as I stand before so many great state leaders, that Ronald Reagan said in his first inaugural address that it was important to remember that the states created the federal government didn't create the states. And Ronald Reagan was right. I met President Reagan as a candidate for Congress in one of those two elections that Jim was kind enough to mention that I lost. Thanks, Jim. No, I was in the White House. It was the summer of 1988, and I'll never forget it. I had my young bride with me. We were standing in line. The president was seated in the blue room for photo ops with candidates we'd been brought out. And my campaign staff, you know how campaign staffers are always handing you something to read or say. And it said something like, hey, we need a bridge, or we need a road, or we need a river to go under the bridge. And I looked at my wife. I was holding what the press team had said I should say, and I said, you know, this is the reason I became a Republican. I think I want to say something to him that I could tell our grandchildren. And my wife, Karen, just patted me on the shoulder and said, just speak from your heart. And so I walked into the blue room. I sat in one of those little gold chairs that are still there to this day, and I sat down and I looked Ronald Reagan in the face, and for all the world, I felt like I was talking to Mount Rushmore. I mean, he looked at me and he said, Mike, how's the campaign going? I said, well, you know, Mr. President, it's going fine, but there's something I'd like to say to you. And he said, well, go ahead. And I looked at him and I said, I just want to thank you for everything you've done to encourage my generation to believe in this country again. And for all the world, I'll always believe For all the world, I'll always believe that in that moment, the 40th President of the United States almost blushed, like he'd never heard it before. And he said, well, Mike, that's a very nice thing of you to say. The truth of the matter is, Ronald Reagan did change the country. He changed the country because he was a governor first. And he understood where the strength of America lies, is in the common sense conservative principles of every American in every state in the Union. It's true. And I was proud to champion that conservative agenda as a member of Congress, but it was going home to Indiana, serving as the 50th governor of that great state, that I had the privilege to put the principles that all of you work toward every day into practice. And I'm proud to say, with this tremendous support of so many ALEC members in the Indiana General Assembly, we passed the largest tax cuts and tax reform in Indiana history. We doubled what was already the largest educational choice program in America. We expanded health savings accounts to people receiving public health care. And we expanded protections for the sanctity of life and adoption reform in the state of Indiana. We did all of that with the support of men and women like you. I learned firsthand the vital capacity of state-based reform. It's really why it's so exciting to see the progress that so many of our governors today are making across the country. Governors can make an extraordinary difference in the life of our nation and its people in ALEC that come alongside our governors and put those conservative principles into practice that make it real. But the truth is, during my time as governor, I also was on the receiving end of dealing with Washington, D.C. Too often as governor of the state, when I would come to our nation's capital, hoping that somebody would be willing to listen to me, I literally would be rebuffed, not by elected officials, but often by unelected bureaucrats who would tell me how things were supposed to work in Indiana. It was, as that president I just mentioned said, it was as though a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital was convinced that they could run our lives in Indiana better than we can run them ourselves. But I'm proud to report under the Trump-Pence administration, those days were over. I took those experiences with me as Vice President of the United States and working alongside President Donald Trump. We worked to put governors and state lawmakers first every single day. We worked to move power out of Washington, D.C. and back into the states. That's just what we did. We removed nearly 25,000 pages of job-destroying regulations, more regulation rolled back than any administration in American history, creating new flexibility for policymakers in Indiana and Arizona and around the country. We established, as you all know, the governor's initiatives on regulatory innovation to reduce outdated state, local, and tribal regulation around the country. I'm proud to say we sped up approval for major infrastructure projects from 10 years to 2 years to build the roads to support growth in America. We not only cut taxes across the board for working families and businesses large and small, but we also passed legislation that limited the unfair SALT deductions that were out there subsidizing high-tax states for fiscal irresponsibility to the detriment of low-tax states around the country. 9,000 opportunity zones attracting resources and investment in states. We defanged the EPA that was driving up construction costs, raising housing prices. We signed long-term Medicaid waivers giving states flexibility to provide consumer-directed health care, and we gave states the flexibility to have work requirements in advancing welfare reform. We moved people from welfare to work in one state after another. And the list goes on, working in the coronavirus task force, working with state governors and state legislators. We launched the greatest national mobilization in history. We worked to open up our natural resources to responsible development. We achieved energy independence for the first time in 70 years. The truth is, whenever we were faced with the choice of trusting Washington or trusting states, our default setting in the Trump-Pence administration was to trust states and to trust the people, just as ALEC would advise. And the results were really astounding. 7 million good-paying jobs, wages rising at the fastest pace in 10 years, the lowest unemployment in 50 years, and maybe I'm most proud of all to say the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans and Hispanic Americans all across this nation. With your support and innovation at the state level, we lifted 10 million Americans off of welfare and onto work. It was the largest poverty reduction in modern history. And real median household income soared by nearly $6,000 to a new record, more than 5 times the gains made in previous administration. The truth is, as my old friend Dick Armey, another great champion of federalism, would say, freedom works. And giving states the freedom to innovate and advance policies put America back to work. You know, my life has changed a lot since the last time we were together. Karen and I moved back to Indiana. We got 5 acres and a pond. I got a riding mower. John Deere 54-inch deck, 0-turn radius, 25 horsepower. Some guys out there are turning green with envy. You know, one of the great things about no longer being vice president is you get to drive your own car. One of the bad parts is you get to pay for your own gas. And I did learn, as I shared not long ago, that, you know, you can be, Jim, you can be congressman for 12 years, you can be governor of your home state, you can even be vice president of the United States, but you're still going to wait 25 minutes for a table at Olive Garden on Saturday night. Fact check, true. So our lives have changed, but how times have changed for all of us. It's extraordinary to think in such a short period of time that the failed leftist policies of the Biden-Harris administration and their allies in Congress, America today is almost unrecognizable from the American that we had built together at the state and federal level in those first 3 years of our administration. Big government is back with a vengeance. President Biden has single-handedly crushed our domestic energy industry, caused gasoline prices to soar through the roof. Runaway spending on Capitol Hill, all in the name of COVID, passed on a party line basis, lit the pilot light on the worst inflation in 40 years. They're actually planning to expand federal land, stripping states of sovereignty over their own land and their own resources. Healthcare waivers that were signed in our administration, allowing for consumer-directed healthcare that respects the dignity of Americans in their healthcare choices, have all been quietly rescinded. And working-class Americans may soon be forced to pay for student loans for liberals who get master's degrees in gender studies. And worse still, at the outset of this past Congress, they sought to federalize our elections, mandating universal mail-in balloting and banning voter ID nationwide. So let me be clear. Election integrity must be a national priority in every state in America. I want to commend all those who have stood and strengthened election integrity in America, and we will never allow the Democrats to nationalize our elections. They've announced efforts to make it illegal for states to pass right-to-work laws. They even tried to prohibit states from using reserves to cut taxes for working families. You know, we need ALEC now more than ever. At a time the American people are struggling, not only an economy that's hurting families. I have to tell you, I was at a gas station in Hobart, Indiana, not long ago. A little mother pulled in, 2 little ones crawling on the back seat when she was filling up the tank of gas. And I said, "How are you making out with these high gas prices?" She said, we're doing fine. She said, "My husband's got a good job." She said, "We just have to go to the food bank twice a week." I said, "You have to go to the food bank?" And she said, "Well, you know, our gas budget comes out of our grocery budget, so there ain't any more of it." But she said, "People at the food bank are real nice." Working Americans shouldn't be going to the food bank. Every single one of us has got to have a heart for families that are hurting in this economy. And we've got to recognize that the fight back has won us back to Congress. But every single day when you go back, we need you fighting every day for state-based reform in your states that will bring real relief to American families in this economy, that will deal with issues that are affecting their families on the streets with a rising crime wave. It's really up to all of you. The 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states or reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Own it. Live it. I mean, we've lived in an era now for decades of trampling the 10th Amendment to the Constitution as government's grown larger and larger. But you go back and remind your citizens, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that Washington, D.C. should dictate what's taught in the public schools in America. Nowhere. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that Washington, D.C. should control our health care, our elections, or state tax policy. I mean, the truth is, leaders in ALEC, we need you to lead the fight. I know the media likes to focus on the shiny object of national politics and the next election. But I mean to tell you, on behalf of the American people, on behalf of my neighbors and friends in Indiana, I just urge you to do the work now. Bring relief now. And the success in politics will follow. And the truth is, ALEC members have been doing just that. And before I close, I want to commend the efforts that so many have made. I couldn't be more excited with Karen Fan sitting at my side. Arizona just passed the first universal school choice program in the United States of America. Thank you. I couldn't be more grateful. Karen, to you, to Governor Ducey, to the entire team there, because I truly do believe what began in Arizona is going to spread to states across the country. I mean, we all know the key to restoring patriotic education in America, the key to curing what ails our schools is simple. Give every parent the right to choose where their children go to school, public, private, parochial, or homeschool. And as we speak, ALEC has been developing model legislation to bring student-centered funding to every state in the country. Earlier this week, another issue has been addressed with tremendous support from ALEC that I want to commend. Men and women, I don't need to tell you that ESG is a pernicious strategy that allows the left to accomplish what it could never hope to achieve at the ballot box or through free market competition. ESG empowers an unelected cabal of bureaucrats, regulators, and activist investors to rate companies based on their adherence to left-wing values. It is anti-free market, it is anti-freedom, and it is anti-American. But I'm pleased to report, earlier this week, the Michigan State Finance Committee became the first state in the country to pass ALEC's model ESG legislation protecting state pensions from Wall Street money managers and their left-wing agenda. Thank you, Michigan. And I just heard today in the car on the way over here, today Florida's CFO announced that the state is pulling $2 billion from BlackRock in the largest anti-ESG divestment in American history. The truth is, every state should pass ALEC's ESG legislation. And I know the Congress will take this issue up as well in the new majority. Make no mistake about it, the enormous resources that are managed, state pension funds, has incredible leverage to turn back this pernicious trend among Wall Street money managers. The truth is, only the states working together can make the kind of progress that I just described, can push back against Leviathan in Washington, D.C., and restore limited government and the bulwark of freedom our founding fathers intended. And let me leave you with a cautionary note to men and women gathered here today who cherish the Constitution. You know, for most of our history, both political parties were committed to the ideals enshrined in the Constitution and a respect for the American founding. That's no longer the case. We live in a time when many on the left routinely demean the American founding. And radical progressives have sought in recent years and will continue to seek to rewrite the God-given liberties enshrined in the Constitution. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, the truth is, men and women, this generation of conservatives may be the last line of defense on the Constitution of the United States. It'll be this generation that decides whether we bequeath to the next generation that timeless charter of freedom that was our inheritance. Every one of us that serves in public office today, and members of our military, take the very same oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. We said we would bear true faith and allegiance to the same. We took the obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And we pledged to well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which we entered. And it ended with a prayer. So help me God. And I urge you in these challenging times to keep your oath. Even when you're assailed by the left by advancing policies that are mischaracterized at the state level, as conservative policies often are, I urge you to keep your oath. Keep your oath, as the Bible says, even when it hurts. Enshrine in your hearts what our first president said. So we must say, the Constitution is the guide I will never abandon. Even as our nation faces historic challenges, I must tell you I'm incredibly optimistic. Because I know the American people. And I have faith. You know, during all my times of public service in the Congress and as governor and as your vice president, my opinion of the American people went up, not down. I'm reminded of that Bible verse where God asked young King Solomon what he wanted. And he said, give me a discerning heart to distinguish between right and wrong, for who is able to govern this great people of yours? What I loved about that was that he knew who he served and he knew whose he was. He knew he served a great people. And I want to say to you in these challenging times, never doubt that the American people are truly great. I've seen it. I've seen it visiting troops downrange in war-torn countries. I've seen it the way total strangers will drive across the country to help neighbors and friends in the wake of hurricanes and floods and natural disasters. I've seen it in the way that people rallied to our cause. In 2016 and again in 2020, we held the banner of freedom high unapologetically, and 74 million people rallied to our cause. I think the challenge that we face in the days ahead is just to have government as good as our people again. And I believe we will. Because I believe in the American people. I believe in the principles of the Constitution of the United States put into practice will create a boundless American future. And I believe in those words that have been over the mantle in our home for all those 20 years. In the one who said, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. And if we will but renew our faith in him and keep faith with our Constitution and the great people of this country, men and women of ALEC, the best is yet to come. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless ALEC. And thank you for the honor of addressing you today.
Please welcome back to the stage, Karen Fan.
Wow, how do I follow that, you guys? He had chills running down my back. Thank you, Vice President Pence. You will always be at least a vice president, a governor, and let's see what else titles that we can possibly attach to your name in the future. At this time, I'd also like to very briefly thank the staff of ALEC and all the staff of the hotel for all of their great service that they have done. And I'd also like you all to know that Vice President Pence, excuse me, sir, he does have a number of his books out here, right out here in the hallway, and he has graciously offered in his busy schedule to stay and do some book signings. So if you are interested, please go that way out the far doors and you can get in line and acquire one of those books, and he will be glad to sign it for you. So, and he told me I was paid to do that as well, so it's okay. With ALEC, I can tell you this is a group of people who are all here because they believe in that good leadership and that leadership is still possible. Moreover, a group of people who all lead themselves, whether that's at the state level or in the private sector. Thank you for your words, Vice President Pence. I can assure you they come as encouragement to all of us. I want to thank everyone here for their contribution to making today such a productive day, and more broadly, our summit such an incredible experience. One of ALEC's core beliefs is that no one has a monopoly on good ideas. That's why participation is key in the national conversation towards implementing our effective solutions. But even as we're here wrapping up the 2022 States and National Policy Summit, I already want to put 2023 on your mind. We will continue building off of the momentum that we have here by going into ALEC's 50th anniversary gala next year. I say that with great pride because there aren't too many organizations out there that can say they've been around 50 years. And I can tell you those on the other side of the aisle, they can't even stay around 5 years. We hope that in addition to continuing to building effective policy solutions, that you'll take the time to celebrate us with that ALEC 50th anniversary next year. There's so much to do and celebrate. Thank you for coming to the States and National Policy Summit, and we can't wait to continue partnering with you there and in the future with the ALEC family. Thank you all.